first we'll start with creating a new collection. So when we go to create a new collection, it's going to ask us for our trap type. Again, this is formatted based on the configuration settings we had. Say we're putting out a CO2 trap. You do not have to put a lure type. You can leave it as unspecified, or we can put CO2 with dry ice here. If you do want to select more than one lure, that is possible. Let's say we also have a light. What we're going to do is hold Command on our keyboard and click light. So you can see over here on the right, it populated that both lures are being used. Collection date, let's say we went out this morning, or a field tech went out and brought us our samples right now. Here we are starting this morning. Number of traps, usually it's 1. Trap nights, we've just left it out overnight, put it out yesterday. And then this tells us, trap started the evening of yesterday, just as a confirmation. We're going to put in the site where our trap, our collection is at. So you'll remember that we created a training site earlier this morning. I do remember that number is 279, but if I'm in my, I just can't remember. There's too many numbers. I can search here for any keyword. And so I remember this morning I created a training site. Maybe I remember this was at that ranch, or I just remember the word Murrieta is in there or whatever. You can search any bit of the site name or code and it'll pop up here. So you can see it's put in our exact location as we were earlier. We can check that our map still looks the same. That's where we were. Beautiful. We can put who it was identified by. If your agency does this, we'll say I did it. Usually your coordinate precision is exact. There are other options here, but the default is exact. And usually when you have a trap out, you know that your trap was exactly there. This checkbox is, sorry, hold on. Usually your trap will have run with no problems. You just check that. But say you went out and your trap had, the fan wasn't working, or the battery died, or there were ants in your trap, but you still want to record that collection. You can uncheck that. You can add comments here. So we can say, fan wasn't running when I picked it up. That just, is an internal comment so I can know what's going on with that trap. You can use this comment for any notes for yourself. Whether or not the trap had problems, you can use this comment as just sort of free text. Anything that's not captured on this form that you wanted to include, you can include it there. So from there, we will add which species we found in our trap. So we could do a drop down and we'll see all of those. This is still, formatted or configured based on those settings, but it's still quite a long list. So instead we can just start typing. Oops, that's not how you spell Tarsalis. I can just start typing Tarsalis and it'll populate. So let's say we found 6 males, and then I didn't count how many blood feds versus whatever. So I'm just going to put 56 females. Let's say, we also found some twinks in our trap, but we did notice that those are 2 blood feds and 4 gravids. It's going to summarize, it's going to put a sum of the number of females in this column. And we'll say 3 or whatever. No males. So there we are. Let's say that's our collection from that trap. This gives you a note here. If a species is not available, it can be added on the configuration. That's what we just went over. But in case you forget, it's right there. Okay, so that is our collection. We haven't saved it yet, but that's our collection. That's what we found. At this point, we have the option to add pools directly from that collection that we created. And depending on your workflow, you might do pools at the same time that you did your collection, you might do this later. So that is up to you. And you don't need to do it right now, but you can if you'd like to. So let's add maybe one pool. We don't know what number pool we're on in our agency. Over here on the right, there's some information. It tells us what our last collection was, and it also tells us what pool numbers are available for 2023. So it's early on in the year, there haven't been many pools used. So we can say, oh, okay, let's start with number 7 because that's in our list. I don't know why I skipped 1, but start with 7. Oops. Other sites is an option for you to add, if you're creating a pool, that you're pulling in some other samples from another site, you can make a note here of what you included in that pool. So when you hover over, you'll again see this pale yellow box. Tells you to list other site codes separated by commas to specify the number of specimens contributed by a site. Place the quantity after the site code wrapped by a parenthesis. So examples there. So that's just an option in case you are, have sites nearby or are interested in a whole region and you only have a couple of mosquitoes. You can pull from different collections. But this pool will be associated with this collection from the same form. So let's say our first pool, we want to create Tarsalis. We know we have 56 of them, 56 females. We're just going to do all of those mixed. Our pools are, we're going to pool 50 mosquitoes, maximum in each pool. And so we know we had 56 females, so we're going to have to go create another pool of just 6. You can type in again here, another pool of 6 mosquitoes. We also have quinks, so let's say we want to do a pool of those quinks. Great, females mixed, and we knew we had 9 of them. Cool. You'll see it's just trying to auto-generate more pools so you can, it's easier data entry. If at any point you don't want this row, just click it, you can delete. Alternatively, if you have like 1 million, QLEX found in a trap and you don't want to have to type this in every time, we can copy this row and it'll just copy them. So if you're creating like 6 pools of 50 mosquitoes each, you can do that and then just edit the pool numbers. We're not going to do that here because we don't have that many. Actually, I'm going to do that for now because I want to show you this warning. Oh, it's telling me there's already 2 of those, maybe. Okay. So if we're adding extra and we want to save our collection, it's going to give us a warning because there's not enough QLEX Tarsalis females on our collection form for the number of pools. And I'm like, oh yeah, shoot, we actually only had 56. So I'm going to go in and delete this row. And now it should work. So it's saved. Gives us a green confirmation up here to say that our collection and any new pools has been successfully saved, and it gives us our collection ID, which is automatically generated. There also on the right here you can see another confirmation in this green box, the drop down of our last collection. It told me what I just entered. We did a CO2 trap at 279. Collected it today for 1 trap night, saved that. Okay, so from there, let me just double check my notes. Okay, one other thing I wanted to show you here in new collections. So say we don't have a site, say, there was a West Nile case in this neighborhood and that's not a site that we have established, or it's a site that is going to be ongoing. We have a thing which are called zero sites. And so what that means is here when we want to go add a collection, let's go again to new collection. Trap type, let's say we did a CO2, we're not even going to worry about that. Collection date is today. And say, okay, we'll put in our training site we were just using. And when I do that and I go to the map, I can't change where this training site trap was. It's not going to let me do it because that's an established site that I'm saying I'm collecting at. But what happens if, oh, there was an outbreak around this site and I actually put traps all around this border? What you can do instead is use what's called a zero site. And so anytime an agency is created in our system, you're assigned the code 000, 6 zeros, as either the location of your agency or whatever address you put in when you established your agency. If it's just the county, it's going to take you to the centroid of that county. But what that allows you to do, it does allow you to change where that trap is. So you can see now I can click anywhere and put that trap at. So, say we were back at 25th and T, and then I actually put a trap over here. In addition to the one I was doing, you can record that one-off trap by using what's called a zero site. Everything else will be the same here. It's just a way for you to add in extra traps that are not part of a established site. Okay. Let's see. So as with the other areas of the gateway, we're going to leave this, we didn't save it. There's also a way for us to manage our collections. We're gonna not worry about that one. But this is one we just created. And if I wanted to edit, say I messed up something, I can go back in and edit it, no problem. Or if I actually decided I wasn't going to run those pools, I can delete them for later. So it just gives you the option to be able to do that. Let's check. So there was a question about, can you number pools starting with 1 each week, or will this just do a running total? And Lincoln answered that pool numbers need to be unique by surveillance year. So if you created pools 1 to 15, the first week you're surveillance, the next week, those numbers won't be available. You're gonna go sequentially or any other number besides 1 to 15, and that resets each year. So you can see for 2023, we have all of these available, but in 2022, surely they used quite a few of those. Another question, when using the zero site, does it record a unique latitude, longitude each time so you can go back and map the collections? Yeah, as long as you're either writing in what that latitude, longitude is for that zero site, or finding that location on the map, it will record exactly where that trap was. And if you set multiple zero sites in a day, say if we're doing a response to a positive mosquito pool with multiple traps, do we get unique coordinates for each? So if you're recording each of them as their own new collection, yes. So you would want to go in and create a new collection for each of those, and your trap site would be 0. Any developers want to add anything to any of those answers?
Just technically, each collection does have an associated set of lat longs. So for instance, if you were to make a collection, even at a particular site, but offset it within that red circle. So let's say you were 100 yards to the left of the centroid of that red circle on one particular day, but then you moved it back to the site's original location the next day, that would be recorded. We would know. So even if you didn't choose a zero site, would be the example, Olivia. So let's say you chose, whatever site number 2, you could actually record that on one particular day because of whatever conditions. I collected just 100 yards to the east of where the pin normally is, and that would be recorded in the system that collection that day, was collected specifically where it was collected.
Right. So just an example of what you're saying in here, if I went within the red circle, it'll allow me to do that, but I can't go outside of the red circle.
Right. Exactly. And then if you went back to look at that collection a week later, you would see that it was those associated lat longs, offset lat longs had been recorded, and it was still recorded at that spot.
Got it. So the example would be, maybe we found positives in this exact location on this trap, and we want to do more traps at this site, but sort of in this general vicinity of a few blocks. We can do that with more traps. Great, thank you, Kurt. Okay, so that was creating collections and pools directly from that collection. We can also create pools not at the same time as our collection. So you might have different people doing collections, you might have different people doing the pools, you might do it on different days, you might wait until you have all your, anything that works with your agency and your workflow. We want to be able to support you in that. So you can also add pools and manage pools from the arthropod pools menu here. And so we could go in and add a new pool here. And so again, we're going to create a pool number based on what was available over here. We're going to want to type in what site code we found that trap at, so we know we're still at that training site. Any other traps any other sites, as we mentioned before, if you want to add those. The trap type we used, when we collected it, what we're adding to our pools, and how many mosquitoes we want to add. And then if you want to add any free text comments, you can do that as well. So you'll notice when you do it this way, you're missing a few rows of information. You don't have, like number of trap types. And so if you're not doing this directly from a collection, you're missing a little bit of information, but that might be okay for your setting for your agency. So we can then go in, we're not actually going to have this second one. And we can go in and save that pool. So pools have been successfully saved. So that's just another way to do it. Also in pools, we can manage our pools. And so here's those pools that we just created. These were associated with this collection. We can edit in here if we need to. Anything you need to do to be able to edit your pools, you can do in there. I did want to mention also at this time, for any folks who weren't here earlier, you can also import any collection and pool data using the data import and spreadsheets. I'm not going to review that fully right now because we did that earlier today, and that video will be recorded and put on our YouTube as soon as I can get to it. But you can also do collections and pools through our data import instead of using the actual modules and forms on VectorServe. Great. Okay, we are going to now review actually creating those batches of pools to send to the lab for testing. So that's either your own agency's in-house testing or to a central lab. So here at UC Davis, we have the DART lab. And so a lot of California agencies, create their pools in their system and then send them to us for testing. So we'll go through how we do that. So in Arthropod here, we've gone through configuration, abundance, the first two under pools. You'll see we also have testing here. So let's go to a new submission. So it'll list all the pools that we have created here under our submissions, or available submissions. And then we can also select what lab is going to receive those pools. So again, this was in our configuration earlier. We set our default to in-house because Sakiolo, whose data we're using, does their testing in-house. But if they one-off wanted to send something to Dart, they can change that. So if we are testing in-house, we can just select whichever pools we want to test. So say we are going to just test our tarsalis in our lab. Great, we can select those. This is showing our pools in the last 30 days. You can change that. Something that's really helpful is to put an expected arrival date. So you might be part of an agency where, you know, some of you are doing the collections and then you're gonna take those pools over to the lab. And that's going to happen in 2 days because you're waiting for all of them to come together or whatever. It can be helpful for the lab to know when to expect those so they can sort of work on their workflow. This is especially helpful if you are sending them out of your agency. So for us here in the Dart lab, it's really nice to know, oh, we're expecting to get, you know, 72 pools on Thursday. So I know to look out for those from our mail folks to make sure, you know, that the dry ice is still going strong when we get them, or I can plan ahead and be like, oh, Thursday is going to be a crazy day. I better, you know, pack an extra lunch or whatever. So that's really helpful. So if we're just going in-house, we can just create our new submission here. We're going to get this green banner of success up here. A pool submission has been created successfully, gives us our pool submission ID. And then you can click here to print the submission. And so this actually just gives you sort of a packing list of what is in those pools. So you could bring your pools and this packing list over to the lab and they know what's in there and what to expect without having to pull out each little tube and try to understand their full workflow. So that's how that works for our in-house testing. If you're going to send to a central lab, so Sakiolo would send to Dart in California. If you're in a different state, you probably have a different central lab. But you'll notice looks a little different. So in-house, it's just include or not. Dart, it's actually allowing us to select which targets we want to test those mosquitoes for. And the central lab has their own configuration settings to be able to put on here what's available in that central lab. If you hover over, it'll tell you what these are. So this one, WSW, is it's a triplex that has West Nile, Western equine, and St. Louis encephalitis. So if we're testing our Culex tarsalis, actually, yeah, and we could do both of these, whatever. We're going to want to test them for those. The other option in our lab is CDZ triplex, which is a Zika, dengue, chikungunya triplex, which we're not going to test these Culex mosquitoes for. So expected arrival, as I mentioned, is especially helpful for central labs. You know, if we know we're going to keep these in our freezer for a few days before we even ship them, we want to be able to tell them, oh, don't expect these until next Tuesday, so that they can plan their workflow. So we can create our new submission here. And it tells us, great, pool submission's been created. And we're going to want to print this packing sheet to send along with our samples. At our Dart lab, we expect this sheet to come with our samples. It just makes everything a lot more seamless to be able to see what's on here. And yeah. So that's what we do for our pool submissions. Also, we can manage our submissions here. So say, you know, I put that last submission in our freezer and I didn't actually know what the expected arrival was until today, I can go back and edit that and then update that submission. Again, we can get that printer form if we need it. We can go back to our managed submissions. There are also abilities to create labels, but we're going to go over that when we go over, well, I guess we could do that now actually. We can go in here. I think we can do that if we go to edit a submission. Maybe not. We could create labels for our pools. This can be helpful if you're doing in lab or in-house. If you're sending them to us at DART, we actually do the labels on our end. But let's say we wanted to create labels for these pools. Oops. We can select which kind of label type we're using, which will allow us to format this page correctly, to then be able to print the labels using our printer. So we select the label type, how we want it to print, which pools to include, and then on our next step, this is our label sheet that's going to go in. Say we've already used, you know, we've used this whole that many labels. We can just choose what's available so that we can feed the label sheet into the printer and not print on areas where we've already used the labels. So when we do that, we click next step, we're going to get a zip file of our labels to print. When we download that, you'll see here's our document with our labels, and it just looks like this, but it's formatted to print correctly with the type of labels you added into the system.